There are moments when you have to stop and wonder, are you actually living your life or you're just surviving it? The daily cycle of the city. Waking up in the dark, suffocating in the endless gridlock of Gurgaon or Noida, draining your soul in office politics, only to return to a lonely, empty place. Even the weekends offer no solace, just the same crowds, the same noise, the same exhausting loop. My mind had reached its breaking point. I didn't want a vacation. I needed an absolute, echoing silence. I needed a place where the only thing I could hear was the rhythm of my own breathing. Usually, a trip to the mountains meant a convoy of friends, loud music, and relentless chatter. Not this time. No friends, no distractions. Just me, my motorcycle, and the biting wings of Uttarakhand. At 4 a.m. on a Saturday, while Delhi was dead to the world, I kicked my bike into gear and rode toward the Himalayas. I thought the journey would bring me peace, but the truth about seeking out total isolation is that when you are truly alone in the dark, you are rarely actually alone. Something in the silence is always waiting for you. As the altitude climbed, the thick, toxic smog of the city was replaced by the crisp, freezing scent of wet earth and ancient deodar trees. I deliberately avoided the tourist traps. No Nainital, no Mussoorie. I wanted the untamed roads. By dusk, I found myself in a microscopic settlement. Calling it a village is an overstatement. It was barely a dozen mud and stone houses clinging to the slope of a mountain. There was no cell network. My ties to the modern world were officially severed. Beside the dirt road, the lone tea stall stood illuminated by a small wood fire. I pulled over, the icy air immediately stinging my face as I removed my helmet. An elderly man sat by the fire, studying me and my exhausted machine. I asked him if there was a place to stay. He offered a gentle smile. "There are no hotels here, son," he said. "But we have a spare room. Give what you think is fair. In these mountains, we do not leave guests out on the road after dark." The cynical, city-dwelling part of my brain immediately looked for a scam. But his voice held a purity you don't find in the concrete jungle. I followed him to his humble home. That night, sitting by a clay oven, eating simple mountain food with his family, I asked if there was anywhere entirely untouched by people that I could explore the next day. The warmth in the room seemed to instantly evaporate. The old man hesitated, exchanging a look with his ancient, frail mother sitting by the hearth. Finally, he spoke of a temple, 15 kilometers deep into the surrounding forest. Not a functioning temple, but an ancient, forgotten ruin. Nobody knows its history, he murmured. Before I could ask more, his mother interrupted. Her voice was raspy, like dry leaves scraping across stone. "Go, child," she warned. "But heed this. Remain there only as long as the sun is in the sky. You must leave before the dusk settles in. After dark, that path, it no longer belongs to humans. You do not know who has been waiting there for centuries." I smiled politely. I assumed it was the usual local folklore, a bedtime story designed to keep tourists from wandering off cliffs. I had no idea that her words were not a myth, but a terrible, absolute truth. The next afternoon, I rode out to the ruins. The trail was brutal, a jagged dirt path that kept my bike restricted to the lowest gears. The forest was so dense, so impossibly massive, that even at 2 in the afternoon, the sunlight barely grazed the forest floor. The silence was deafening. An hour later, standing in the heart of the woods, I found it. Calling it a temple felt wrong. It was a carcass of stone. Time had blackened the rocks, and massive, thick tree roots had woven through the walls like giant pythons crushing their prey. There were no bells, no offerings, no priests, just statues whose faces had been entirely eroded by centuries of rain, leaving black, smooth stone unturned. I sat in the center of the ruins. The air was freezing, a bone-deep chill that initially felt calming. But as I sat there, the sensation shifted. The hair on my arms stood up. A heavy, suffocating feeling settled over my shoulders. I felt someone standing directly behind me. I felt eyes boring into the back of my skull. I whipped around. Nothing. Just dust and ancient rock. But as I turned, my eyes caught my watch. It was around 6:30 p.m. In the mountains, 6:30 p.m. meant the sun is gone. Panic, cold and sharp, flooded my veins. The old woman's trembling voice echoed in my head. After dark, that path no longer belongs to humans. I grabbed my bag, kicked the bike into gear, and tore out of the clearing. But it was too late. The sky bruised into pitch black, and a fog so thick it felt like breathing water rolled in. My headlight could barely penetrate 10 feet of the gloom. Around 5 kilometers into the nightmare, I saw a single, sickly yellow bulb glowing through the mist. It was a makeshift tea stall. I pulled over, my throat dry, my hands violently shivering. A man sat there, his face carved from stone, his eyes devoid of any light. I asked for a cup of tea. He placed it in front of me, looked at my motorcycle, and in a voice that dragged like gravel, asked, "You're coming from the ruins above?" I nodded. He stared at me with exhausted, bloodshot eyes. "You made a mistake, son. You stayed too long. They should never have let you leave that place alone. Listen to me. Do not go any further. Sleep here on this wooden plank tonight. I will keep the fire burning. But do not, under any circumstances, try to cross this road tonight." But the arrogance of the city dies hard. I reasoned that I only had 10 kilometers left. Half an hour and I'd be safe in my bed. I paid for the tea, brushed off his warning, and rode back into the abyss. I would soon realize it was the worst mistake of my life. The darkness was absolute. If I held my hand out beyond the headlight, it vanished. I was creeping along in third gear. Suddenly, my headlight washed over something in the exact dead center of the dirt road. I squeezed the brakes. It was a man, an old man, wearing a filthy, mud-soaked white dhoti, sitting with his back to me. I thought he might be injured. I honked the horn. Once, twice. He didn't flinch. Not a single millimeter. I crept the bike forward, rolling within 5 feet of him. My headlight hit him dead on. My brain short-circuited. My lungs forgot how to pull air in. He wasn't sitting on the ground. He was floating 2 feet in the air, and the bottom half of his body was missing. He was just a torso, suspended in the fog. I tried to scream, but the terror paralyzed my vocal cords. Slowly, the severed torso turned to face me. There were no eyes, no nose, no mouth, just a smooth, featureless orb of pitch black skin. Survival instinct hijacked my body. I dropped the clutch, redlined the throttle, and swerved into the dirt shoulder, inches from the entity. The back tire violently fishtailed. I nearly went down, but I gripped the handlebars with a death grip and tore into the night, screaming prayers at the top of my lungs, just to hear a human voice. I thought the worst was over. I was wrong. 2 minutes later, the rear suspension of my motorcycle violently bottomed out. The bike swerved under the sudden, immense weight. Someone, or something, had just sat down on the pillion seat right behind me. My blood turned to ice. My spine locked. I was too terrified to physically turn my head, so my eyes darted to the vibrating rearview mirror. In the dim red glow of the tail light, I saw her. A woman, maybe 30 years old. Her hair was a wild, tangled mess. Her skin was the color of a drained corpse, a sickening, luminous white. She didn't blink. She was just staring at me through the mirror with eyes that looked like smooth stones. Then came the smell. It wasn't just rot. It was the heavy, suffocating stench of wet earth, like a freshly dug grave during a monsoon. She was pressed so tightly against my back that the freezing temperature of her skin was bleeding right through my thick riding jacket, chilling my spinal cord. I was weeping behind my visor, pleading with God to keep me alive. I locked my eyes straight ahead, pushing the bike to 80 kilometers an hour, blindly through the fog, a literal death wish on a mountain cliff. And then she moved. I felt her head slowly slide forward over my shoulder, right next to my right ear. Inside the helmet, I heard the wet, rattling sound of her inhaling. A voice, hollow and colder than death, whispered into my ear. "It is very dark. Drive slowly, or we will fall." My mind snapped. I have no memory of the miles that followed. I don't know how I didn't crash. I just held the throttle open as the smell of the grave and the paralyzing ice on my back clung to me. Finally, through the mist, the faint lights of the village appeared. As I crossed the threshold of the first house, a street dog erupted into a vicious, snarling bark. Instantly, the crushing weight on the back of the bike vanished. The suspension popped back up. I slammed on the brakes, dropped the bike into the dirt, and collapsed, hyperventilating. The old man ran out of his house. One look at me, and he knew. He knew exactly what roads I had traveled, and what shadows I had outrun. He dragged me inside and bolted the heavy wooden door. I burned with a terrifying fever that entire night. I didn't leave the house until the sun was scorching the sky the next day. I paid the man, folded my hands in gratitude, and left. He just nodded, knowing what I was leaving behind, or perhaps knowing what I was taking with me. I rode straight back to Delhi in a single day. I took leave from the office, slept with every single light in my apartment blazing for days. Months have passed since that night. The endless loop of Gurgaon traffic, the office politics, the noise, it's all back. Most days, I can almost convince myself it was a hallucination, just the fog and a fatigued mind playing tricks on me. But sometimes, when I am riding alone on an empty stretch of a road late at night, the rear suspension of the motorcycle tips, just a fraction, as if someone is settling into the seat behind me, and the smell of the wet grave dirt returns. Some passengers, it seems, never really get off.